If you would please turn to Luke 15. That's where we're going to start this morning. Hopefully going to make some progress and cover several chapters. I apologize. We're not going to read a lot of the text in some of these sections. And that's because they're so familiar to you. And I trust that in preparing for this morning that you had a chance to read through these 4 chapters that I mentioned. So we're going to be starting in Luke chapter 15. This is a very familiar chapter, Luke 15, for Christians. And it's not only familiar to us, but I hope you'd agree with me that maybe it's one of the most loved parables, one of those parables that we can learn a lot from these parables. It contains, I think, some of the most precious thoughts that Jesus ever taught. And at the beginning of the chapter, you'll notice here what kind of sets the stage for the parables that Jesus is going to give here. In chapter 15, beginning with verse 1, it says, "Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near him to listen to him. And both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, 'This man receives sinners and he eats with them.'" And so this is what's happening. The scribes and Pharisees, always so critical of Jesus and what he did. When had this happened before? Do you remember another occasion when they came with the same charge that Jesus ate with tax collectors and with sinners? Do you remember? In Matthew 9, I said Matthew 9, is that right? Yes, it is Matthew 9. In Matthew 9 and in Mark chapter 2, who is it that becomes a disciple of the Lord and decides to have he hosts a gathering where many came to eat? You remember who that was? Come on, there's only one. Matthew. And on that occasion, we find that they said the same thing. This man eats with sinners and tax collectors. And what was the answer that Jesus gave about that? Did he apologize and say, no, that's not really true? What answer did he give on that occasion?
The healthy don't need a doctor, it's the sick.
Exactly. Those who are healthy, those who are well, they don't need a doctor. And that's what you think you are, is what he was implying. But these individuals, they do. So we see that Jesus here is going to present 3 very powerful parables. And they are a response to this criticism. And who can briefly tell me what the first parable was about? The man that had 100 sheep. He lost one of them. And what did he do?
Look for the one.
Look for the one. I think in some versions it says, until he found it. And what did he do in going out and looking for that one?
Left the 99.
Left the 99. I don't know if we're supposed to suppose or think that there was a risk involved here, but he was concerned about the sheep. Why would he be concerned about one sheep if there are 99 that are safe and he knows where they're at?
He's the shepherd and he realizes the value of the one.
Yeah, he knows the value of that one sheep, and it's precious to him, that one sheep. And so he goes and he searches. But the remarkable, did you raise your hand? Okay. The remarkable thing that we're supposed to notice is what happens after he finds that sheep. What does he do? He rejoices. He has a party, basically. He celebrates. He invites his friends. That's the kind of spirit that very often we feel when we find something that was precious to us that was lost. In the second parable, it's not a man that has done something, it's a woman. And what has she done here? Yes, Rob?
Can I interject my
Yeah.
thought now? The other thing that I think is really important in this is that it teaches us the vulnerability that we have when we're isolated. You know, he left the 99, there's probably a bigger chance that they're gonna be okay because they're together.
Yeah.
When somebody falls away and we don't recognize that and we don't go after them and we don't seek them,
Yeah.
there's more of a tendency that they're going to be lost and they're by themselves. So it just teaches the value of the church, that we are better together, those type of things.
Why does the sheep get lost? Does he make a decision? Anything? You know, I'm going to go for a walk and see if I... Why does the sheep get lost?
They always do that. They always wander off.
Okay. You know, they don't have a mind that is discerning about these kind of things and where danger is. This is not like men. This is not like people. Okay, the second parable. What does a woman lose? 1 coin out of 10. And what does she do? Frantically. I can see her being frantic as I look for car keys and such things. What did she do? Searched everywhere. Kind of turned the house upside down, you might say, looking for that coin. And again, the real point I think that Jesus is trying to make is, what does he do, or what does she do when she finds it? What does she do? Has a party, celebrates. What does Jesus say about sinners that are lost and that are found? Do you really believe that?
Oh, yeah.
Why do you believe it?
Because it says it.
It says it. It says it. There's more joy in heaven over one sinner that repents than over all of these that they don't need to come back. Why is that, do you suppose? Why is there such joy in heaven? Because each soul is precious, is valuable to God. God doesn't want to lose one of us. Not one of us. Now, what's the difference when we come to the third parable? What's the difference? What happens here?
We're talking about people and we're instead of inanimate objects or animals, and that the person chooses to leave after considering it.
Yeah, the son wanted to leave. I hope that you recognize this is an act of rebellion on the son's part. He is pretty much demanding, give me my part of the inheritance. And he goes off into a far country. He makes a decision to do that. What else is different in this parable as compared to the man looking for a sheep, the woman looking for her coin? What is different here? Huh?
He patiently waited and hoped.
Yeah, we're not really told that. But hopefully that was his mindset. He didn't go searching for his son. Has that ever bothered you when you've read this passage?
The father is looking, we don't get a lot of the picture of the father, but I picture the father. In the morning, he looks out, he knows which way his son went. He looks, when he sees him, what's he do? He runs to him.
Yeah.
So I don't fault the father.
Okay, I'm not trying to fault the father. But what I'm saying is that what has to take place for somebody who is lost to come back? Yeah, they have to come to their senses, don't they? They have to realize they're lost. They have to realize that I am so much better off to go back to my father's house. Do you think that we as a church ought to be searching for those that are lost? Absolutely. Do you think we are? Do you think you are? Delaney, you had a point.
You're going off on a point I don't want, but what occurred to me is perhaps is that the son had to recognize, and he had to be so humble that when he came back, he was willing to be placed anywhere as long as he could be there.
Yeah. Yeah, he was deeply humbled, wasn't he? Absolutely. He was willing to take the husk that were being given to the pigs and fill his belly with them. And did he say, I'm going to go back and I'm going to explain to my father, I'm just going to say, Father, you know, I made a mistake, but I'm back. And so let me come back into the household. Let me be one of the sons again. Was that his thinking? Was that his attitude? Well,
Worthy
yeah.
to be called your son.
Yeah. And that tells us about his humility in this situation. I'm no longer worthy. Just make me as one of the least of your servants, and that would be far better than where I was at. And what was the reaction of the father? What would your reaction be? What would you do if you were the father in this situation? What did this father do? Yeah, he was happy. So happy, he said, we're going to have a party. And it almost seems like the son could barely get his confession out that he says, we're going to kill the fatted lamb. We're going to put a ring on your finger. We're going to put a robe on you, and we're going to celebrate. Isn't that the point that Jesus has been trying to make? That what the reaction should be when a sinner is brought back? But there's another character here. And some might say this is the parable of two lost sons. Yeah, did you have a point, Sarah?
That what it's showing is sometimes the lost leave and sometimes the lost are staying, but they're lost internally.
Yeah.
And those are some ways harder
Yeah.
to notice.
Yeah.
It's easy to know, like, oh, that person left, but we can be internally not here,
Yeah.
and our attitudes can be wrong, but we're showing up, and that's being lost as
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Who was he talking about, do you suppose? Who was he making reference to here? Pharisees and the scribes. They had no real compassion, no sympathy for those that were lost. They really weren't concerned about what had happened to them. All right. Any other comments? We're going to go ahead. Any other comments here? Yeah.
And I'm not positive, but in some of the studies I've looked at, the son could ask for his portion early. He didn't have to wait until dad died or whatever the time of fighting. He could ask for that. So by him asking, that really wasn't that wrong. The wrong part was what he did with what he got.
He was saying home is no longer good enough for me. He was saying, I don't need to be here any longer. I don't want to be here any longer. I don't want to be here any longer with my father. All right. Chapter 16. Did you read it? Do you remember this parable? It's kind of an unusual parable. Let's go ahead and read the first 9 verses there. Terrell, do you have it? Would you like to read? Yeah, Luke 16, verses 1 through 9. Okay.
And he said also unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, so thou mayest be no longer steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig. To beg I am ashamed. I am resolved what to do, that, when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his lord's debtors unto him, and said unto the first, How much owest thou unto my lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, Take thy bill, and sit down quickly, and write 50. Then he said to another, And how much owest thou? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, Take thy bill, and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when ye fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitation.
All right. What are we reading here? What is the point that Jesus is making, do you think? Was he saying, this guy gets praised by his master for the way that he handles things. And so look at this example, and what a good example. Is that what he's saying here? Was this a good, honorable steward? Was this a good servant that we're talking about here? No, he had failed in his management, hadn't he? And, but what did he do, as this is explained to us? And it talks about what he's thinking in his mind. I'm about to be fired. What should I do? What does he do? He finds a way to somehow have a certain group of people feel indebted to him, right? He says, this is what I'll do. I'll make a deal with all of these people. How's that going to make them feel towards him? Obviously. Wow. Give you 50 instead of 100? Oh, yeah. Give you 80 instead of 100? Yes. I'm all in. The master found out or knew what he had done. And so when he is praising the actions of the steward, what is he really praising here? What is he, saying? This is something that maybe we might want to think about.
He's making preparation for his future.
Exactly. Did you hear what Mickey said? He's making preparation for his future. It was all about him, not his master, not getting some of the money or some of what was owed to the master. It was all about him. What can I do so that somehow I'll have somebody that I can turn to, somebody that I can ask help from? And what does Jesus say in verse 9? What is he saying here, do you think? Would you read that again, Terrell?
Verse 9, And I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that, when you fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitations.
Okay, so what is the manna of unrighteousness that we're to use to make some friends with? What's the manna of unrighteousness? Yeah, exactly, Rob. Exactly. The wealth of this world. What does Jesus say about the wealth of this world in the Sermon on the Mount? Don't seek it. Don't lay up treasures. Seek heavenly treasures. That's what's most important. But what are we also taught about the wealth that may come to us? What does Paul basically say to the rich in 1 Timothy chapter 6? What's he say to them? Get rid of your wealth. Be rich in good works. Do good with your wealth. Brethren, are we not stewards of what God has given us? Are the things that we have, are they not part of God's blessing us and his providing for us? We're stewards. I hope we would all agree. We're stewards. And we are to use what God has given us in a way that he would approve of. And he says here, use the things that you have physically, financially, use those things in a way that shows you're looking to the future and you're looking for God to approve you and to welcome you. Does that make sense to you? Yeah,
It is, just I don't know.
it's puzzling.
His moral of the story in verse 9 doesn't feel like a moral to the
I know,
story.
I know, I know. Jim?
Yeah, this verse 9, I've considered it to be Jesus' saying, go ahead, make all these friends. But when it comes time that you need something, really need something important, who are you going to go to? And he's saying, this is your circumstance. You have made friends, but for what? Do you think this is the right path? You know, he's making other similar comments. It's kind of, I don't want to use the word that Jesus is being sarcastic, but he is certainly being ironic maybe. You know, look at the position you put yourselves in. You got these friends, but what are you going to do when you need something?
Yeah. Verses, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, I was going to say, in addition, just making a comparison. If you can't be trusted to be faithful with unrighteous wealth,
Yes.
it goes on, how can you be trusted with things that are effectively eternal?
Yes.
And so be careful.
Yeah.
What you do.
Verses 10 through 13 help us to realize what he's talking about. And here's the admonition for us. We are to be faithful with what God has given us. He says, if you're not faithful in a little, and that's what God has given us, you're not going to be faithful with the things that are much more important, the things that really matter. You're not going to be faithful with that. Doesn't that kind of scare you? I think, yeah, Mickey?
I think the comparison, following on what Brian has said, indicates that here is the wisdom of the world to take care of me physically. How much more important is it to make proper preparation and take care of me spiritually?
Yes, exactly. But we can clearly see that he's, in a sense, in particular, talking about the use of money, the use of the unrighteous mammon. Have you ever had somebody come up to you, I know you have, and ask for money? And there you are with a decision to make. And what do you usually, what's the basis of your decision making? What do you think about? What are you trying to decide?
What are they going to use it for?
Yeah. What are they going to use it for? I have a hard time when the people have a dog with them. I'll admit it. You know. And sometimes the dog's got a coat on. I saw one the other day that their dog had a coat on. And I thought, wow. And a lot of times they've got a cell phone. And if you're there a minute earlier or a minute later, I don't know about you, but my tendency is not to think this is one of the ones that maybe I need to be real worried about. Brethren, we are to, as Dan said it, I think, last Sunday or a couple weeks ago, we're to have an open hand as God's people. We are to be generous. Would it be better to give to somebody that didn't deserve it and be wrong than it would be to say, you know what, yeah.
What you're saying kind of goes back to something I would be thinking about with this verse is Hebrews 13:2, where those who entertain angels unaware and be hospitable so that we never know when our unrighteous wealth or the wealth of this world might have spiritual, eternal consequences, and I think that's kind of what's said.
Yeah.
Saying,
Yeah.
use your unrighteous wealth for they might receive you into eternal dwellings. There's a spiritual aspect to how we use our wealth.
Yeah.
That sometimes we don't even recognize,
Yeah.
like in Hebrews.
That's excellent. This should be a lesson for all of us. Now, I'm going to jump to the end of the chapter and the story about Lazarus and the rich man. Why do you think that these things are put together? What you said about the use of wealth and what you see occurring in the life of the rich man. Read the first couple of verses of that section that has to do with the rich man. 19 and 20. Who will read that for me? Yeah, Linda?
There was a rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed with what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came and licked his sores.
Okay, so here are these two completely different situations. Here's a rich man, and he lives just as extravagantly as he wants to. He can have whatever he wants to eat. He can dress himself as finely as he wants to. He can do anything he wants to make his life comfortable and luxurious. And on the other hand, here's someone that is just the complete opposite so far as having the things that are needed. I think that in part what we're seeing is an example of someone that did not use their wealth wisely, someone that was foolish with the riches that they had been given. But we're told about them dying and about here Lazarus is in Abraham's bosom. And the rich man is where? He's in a place of torment, terrible suffering there. And what does the rich man ask? He asks several things, but what does he ask first of all? Which seems like such a very small thing, doesn't it? What does he ask?
A drop of water.
Abraham, could you just let Lazarus dip his finger in water and touch my tongue with it? What was the answer that the Lord gave? Says there's too great a distance between where Abraham is and where you are. And then I like, though, what the rich man asked next. What does he ask? Will someone go to my father's house and warn my 5 brothers about this place? That seems like somebody that had come to their senses and wanted to be helpful to others. And what does Abraham say to him? They have Moses and the prophets. Well, wait a minute, the rich man says. No. If somebody comes from the dead, that'll really get their attention, and it will cause them to see that they don't want to come here. And what is the answer that Abraham gives to that? That doesn't work that way. They have Moses and the prophets, and they are sufficient. Dan, have you preached on these verses? I'm sure you have. Yeah, Mickey, I'm sure you have.
I think is important to realize about the last phrases there. It's kind of like bringing up the older brother at the end of the prodigal son story. Jesus is giving us sharp criticism to the Pharisees and scribes and chief priests and any of those groups that we get described as being his enemies.
Yeah.
Like, it's when he talks about somebody who won't listen to Moses and the prophets, he's talking about them.
Yeah.
They're the experts in Moses and the prophets.
Yeah.
They're not listening because they don't like Jesus.
Yeah.
And he says all of that text was pointing to Jesus. It was pointing to him. So anyway, the whole thing is just letting them know And you can tell that it's them because he says, if someone rises from the dead, they won't believe. Then, a couple of years later, someone rose from the dead and they didn't believe.
Yeah. That's a good point. And Brian has emphasized very well this attitude that we see with the Pharisees and with the scribes, and how that a lot of what is written, a lot of what Jesus has said, has them in mind. He's thinking about them. Any other point here, Mickey?
Sometimes when we talk with people, they want to say, well, you know, if I could see a miracle, then
Yeah.
I would. No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And this illustrates it quite well.
Yeah.
The power of what God says is emphasized in this passage.
Yes.
And we don't ever need to diminish that.
No. God's word is powerful. It is sufficient. It will accomplish what he intended for it to accomplish. We should never doubt that. We should never think, well, Lord, isn't there another way? Can't we somehow do something different here? Any other comments? Anything else? Yes, Jim?
Back up in verse 20, well, when he wants Lazarus to go. When he wants Abraham to send Lazarus to get to get his fingertip wet.
Yeah.
It's still demonstrating that he is still not accepting.
Yeah.
He thinks he is still greater than Lazarus.
Yeah.
And it speaks to, they're just not getting the point.
Yeah.
The Pharisees just weren't getting the point.
You're exactly right. They weren't getting the point. Yes.
Quick note on that word dip.
Yes.
Sometimes we think that the word baptizo,
Yeah.
why didn't they just translate it instead of transliterate it?
Yeah.
It's translated here. That's
Yeah.
the word.
Yeah.
Dip.
Dip.
Now, if we know what dip means, we've got it.
Yeah.
We know what baptism is.
It's not baptism. It's not baptism. All right. Chapter 17. Jerome, have you got your Bible open? Can you read for us chapter 17, verses 1 through 2, 1 and 2?
He said to his disciples, "It is inevitable that stumbling blocks come, but woe to him through whom they come. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea, than that he would cause one of these little ones to stumble."
Okay. What is a stumbling block? What's a stumbling block? I know what the word stumble means. I've done that, haven't you? Causes you to fall. All right. So we're obviously talking about spiritual stumbling blocks. So what are we talking about here then, do you think? Can we put a stumbling block in the way of another Christian that causes them to sin, that causes them to be tempted? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. We could spend the rest of this hour and next hour talking about different things and how they could cause us to stumble. Are we careful, brethren, about not putting a stumbling block in the way of others? Do we sometimes have to back up and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have... That, if you were to hear somebody tell you that don't take the Bible so literally and think that you have to keep some of these commandments to the letter of the law, that this is just kind of basic teaching and you should do with it whatever your mind tells you to do with that passage. We're encouraging people not to take seriously God's word when we suggest something like that. Our example, can we by our example become a stumbling block to others in a variety of ways? Of course we can. So we have to do our best to avoid that. Any comments? Yeah, Sam?
I like how you put that, putting the doubt in someone's mind, because it sounds very similar to Genesis. Did God really say that? Causes them to.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you can see what happened.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to look at verses 7 through 10. Ethan, could you read for me chapter 17, 7 through 10?
Which one of you, having a servant tending sheep or plowing, will say to him when he comes in from the field, "Come at once and sit down to eat"? Instead, will he not tell him, "Prepare something for me to eat. Get ready and serve me while I eat and drink. Later you can eat and drink"? Does he thank that servant because he did what was commanded? In the same way, when you have all done all that you were commanded, you should say, "We are unworthy servants. We've only done our duty."
Do you think that sometimes we can be guilty of handing out praise? What's the right word, the right thought? Do you think that you ought to be really praised for doing things that it's your natural duty to do? Jerome, do you praise Darlene for every single thing she does in the home? Why not? It's nice, isn't it, though, it's nice to be appreciated. It's nice to be appreciated. And can we lift others up by saying nice things, by giving compliments? Yeah, I'm not talking about failing to do that. But we live in a society where that everybody feels like they need to be praised for every effort they make in anything. I coached when I taught school, and I have grandsons that played Little League baseball. Do you know what's happened in Little League baseball and Little League this and Little League that? Participation trophies. That's crazy, isn't it? Isn't it? Now, is it okay for the dad to say, "Honey, you really played hard out there. I'm so proud of you. And is that okay?" Yes. But this idea of people getting praise for everything, when we as God's servants do what it is our responsibility to do, we shouldn't expect God's going to lift us up and say, "Wow, that's incredible." Any comments about that? That couldn't be the first bell. Yeah. Any comments about that?
I think it's important for us to solidify the emphasis of the parable is on our own attitudes toward ourselves. He's not explaining how God views us.
Yeah.
He's not saying God sits in heaven and he's not impressed by you. Like, he's not saying that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other stuff that he tells us. God appreciates even the meager efforts that you're able to make. It's a sweet smelling aroma coming up before him. He appreciates that. But you shouldn't celebrate yourself.
Absolutely.
For how you serve in the presence of God. You're
Absolutely.
just there to serve for his glory, not for your own praiseworthiness.
Yeah. We don't need to be patting ourselves on the back constantly and desiring praise constantly. Jim? All right. Yeah. All right. The next thing in chapter 17, if my voice is going to help me to get there, are the 10 lepers that were cleansed. What happened to those 10 lepers? They went away without thanking God except for one, and he was a Samaritan. And Jesus makes the point down here. He says, "Were there not 10 that were cleansed? But the 9, where are they?" D. Bowman used to say that it seems like the besetting sin of our generation is ingratitude, not being properly thankful. Any comments about this? Anything here?
Between the two parables right there, that the one is, the first parable is don't expect to be thanked for every little thing you do in the kingdom. But the second parable is don't forget to thank God for every good thing he does in your life.
Yeah,
There's
good point.
Cool little side by side with those
Yeah.
two.
I'm not going to get into the last segment of this chapter. There are two comings of Jesus that are talked about in the New Testament. What are they? And I'm not referring to his initial coming into the world. What are they? There's the last coming, what we usually talk about, the second coming of Christ, when he comes at the end of time. But what is the other coming that is talked about in the Gospels? Yeah. Yes, exactly. The destruction of Jerusalem. If you look at the parallel in Matthew, the parallel in Mark, he says, this generation shall not pass away until these things have happened. He was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. I believe the context here fits what is found there in Mark 13 very well. He's not talking about the last coming of the Lord. All right, our time is up. So Brian will start with chapter 18 next week. All right, thank you.